The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty streets of Glenrio, New Mexico, as Clara Louise gripped her parasol tighter, watching the most infuriating man she had ever seen work with a wild stallion that should have broken his neck 3 times over. It was August of 1878, and Clara had returned from finishing school in Philadelphia just 2 weeks prior, expecting to find the same sleepy border town she had left 3 years ago. Instead, she found herself standing outside her father's bank, transfixed by the sight of Flynn Crawford in the corral across the street, speaking in low tones to a black horse that looked like it had been born from a thunderstorm. The horse reared and kicked, but Flynn never flinched, never raised his voice, just kept talking to the animal like they were old friends working through a disagreement. Clara's younger sister Beatrice tugged at her sleeve. "Papa says we should come inside. The sun is too strong, and it is not proper for us to be staring." "I am not staring," Clara said, though her eyes never left the corral. "I am simply observing the local commerce. Papa always says we should take an interest in the town's businesses." Beatrice giggled. "Flynn Crawford is not a business. He is just a drifter who trains horses for anybody who will pay him. Papa says he has no prospects and no ambition beyond the next meal." That got Clara's attention. She turned to look at her sister, who was just 16 and still believed everything their father said without question. "How do you know his name?" "Everyone knows Flynn Crawford. He has been in town for about 6 months now. Every rancher within 50 miles brings their difficult horses to him." Beatrice leaned closer, whispering conspiratorially. "Martha Henderson says he is part Cherokee, but nobody knows for certain because he never talks about where he came from." Clara looked back at the corral. Flynn had his hand on the stallion's neck now, still speaking softly. The horse's ears were forward, listening. There was something in the way he moved, patient and confident at once, that made her chest feel tight. "Come inside, girls." Their father's voice boomed from the doorway of the bank. Walter Louise was a large man with ambitious dreams and a personality to match. He had moved the family to Glenrio 5 years ago when the railroad promised to make the town a major junction. The railroad had come, but the prosperity he expected had been slower to follow. Still, he remained the wealthiest man in town, and he never let anyone forget it. Clara followed her sister inside, but her mind stayed in that corral across the street. That evening at dinner, Clara's mother Margaret served roasted chicken with potatoes, the kind of substantial meal that reminded everyone of their social standing. There were only 4 other families in town who could afford chicken more than once a week. "I heard you were watching that horse trainer this afternoon," Walter said, cutting into his meat with more force than necessary. "I hope you were not entertaining any foolish notions." Clara kept her expression neutral. 3 years at Miss Porter's school for young ladies had taught her how to school her features into polite disinterest. "I was simply interested in his technique. We did not have many cowboys in Philadelphia." "He is not a cowboy," Walter said dismissively. "Cowboys work ranches, drive cattle, earn honest wages. Flynn Crawford is a wanderer who will be gone as soon as he runs out of horses to break or gets himself killed trying." "How do you know so much about him?" Clara asked. Walter set down his fork. "Because 3 months ago, he had the audacity to come into my bank asking for a loan to buy some land outside town. Said he wanted to start a proper horse breeding operation. I turned him down, of course. The man had nothing to offer as collateral except a saddle and that wild-eyed mare he rides." Something in Clara's chest tightened. Perhaps he would have been a good investment. You said yourself the ranchers come from miles around. "Clara Louise, I did not send you to the finest finishing school in Pennsylvania to have you come back questioning my business decisions." Walter's voice carried a warning edge. "That man is not for you. I have much better prospects in mind." "Oh," Clara tried to keep her tone light. "And what prospects are those?" Margaret interjected smoothly, ever the peacemaker. "Your father has been corresponding with the Harrington family in Santa Fe. Their son Robert visited last spring. Do you remember? He is very established in his father's freight business." Clara did remember. Robert Harrington had soft hands, a weak chin, and an annoying habit of talking over women. He had spent his entire visit explaining the freight business to her father while looking at Clara like she was another piece of cargo to be acquired and transported. "I am only 18, Clara said. "I am in no hurry to marry." "You are already 18, Walter corrected. "Your mother was married at 17. It is time to think practically about your future." Clara excused herself from the table as soon as she could manage it without causing offense. She went to her room and stood at the window, looking out at the darkening street. Across the way, she could see a small fire burning behind the livery stable where Flynn apparently made his camp. The sight of it filled her with a restlessness she could not name. The next morning, Clara woke early and dressed in one of her simpler day dresses, a pale blue cotton that was already too warm for the New Mexico heat. She told her mother she was going to visit the general store, which was not exactly a lie, though it was not the whole truth either. The general store was 2 buildings down from the livery stable. Inside Kelsey's general store, Clara took her time examining fabric and ribbons she had no intention of buying. Through the window, she could see Flynn leading a gray mare in circles, his movements fluid and economical. She was so focused on watching him that she did not notice Mrs. Kelsey approaching until the older woman spoke directly beside her. "That one is something special, is he not?" Clara jerked her attention to the store owner, feeling her cheeks flush. "I beg your pardon, Mrs." Kelsey had a knowing smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "Flynn Crawford. Half the young women in town have found reasons to walk past the livery stable more often. You are certainly not the first." "I was not watching him specifically," Clara said, lifting her chin. "I was merely looking out the window." "Of course you were, dear." Mrs. Kelsey patted her arm. "For what it is worth, he is not like the other young men around here. He is respectful, hard-working, and he has a gift with horses that borders on magical. My husband says he has never seen anything like it." Clara selected a spool of thread she did not need, just to have something to do with her hands. "My father says he is a drifter with no prospects." "Your father judges men by their bank accounts," Mrs. Kelsey said gently. "That is his right, of course, and usually good business sense. But there are other measures of a man's worth." Clara paid for the thread and left the store, but instead of heading home, she found her feet carrying her toward the livery stable. She told herself she was just curious, that there was no harm in a simple conversation. Flynn was standing in the corral, his back to her, still working with the gray mare. Up close, Clara could see he was tall and lean, with dark hair that touched his collar and sun-bronzed skin that spoke of long days outdoors. He wore a simple cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms, and dark trousers tucked into worn boots. "Can I help you, miss?" He spoke without turning around, his voice a low rumble that seemed to resonate in her chest. Clara froze. "How did you know I was here?" Horse told me. He still had not turned around. "She keeps looking past my shoulder at you. Horses notice everything." "I did not mean to interrupt your work." "You are not interrupting. She needs a moment to think anyway." He finally turned to face her, and Clara felt her breath catch. Flynn Crawford had the kind of face that was more interesting than handsome, all angles and planes weathered by sun and wind. But his eyes were remarkable, a light brown that looked almost gold in the morning sun, and they held an intelligence and humor that made her want to keep talking just to see what he would say next. "You are Walter Louise's daughter," he said. It was not a question. "Clara Louise. And you are Flynn Crawford, guilty." He walked over to the fence, moving with an easy grace that reminded her of the horses he trained. "I take it your father would not approve of you being here." Clara lifted her chin. "I am an adult. I can speak to whomever I choose." Something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. "That is a fine philosophy, but it does not usually work that way for bankers' daughters, especially when they are talking to men who got turned down for loans. You know who I am. I know your father. That means I know about you, your mother, and your sister. Small town like this, everybody knows everybody's business." He leaned against the fence rail, studying her with an openness that should have been rude but somehow was not. "You just got back from some fancy school back east. Your father has plans to marry you off to some freight magnate's son. You are supposed to be the crown jewel in his social climbing operation." Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks, though whether from anger or embarrassment she could not say. "You seem to know a great deal about my life." "Like I said, small town, people talk." He tilted his head slightly. "Question is, what are those plans of yours?" "I have not decided yet," Clara said, surprised by her own honesty. "I thought returning home would help me figure out what I want, but everything feels different now, smaller somehow." Flynn nodded slowly. "Philadelphia will do that to you. World gets bigger when you leave home, hard to fit back into the old space. You have been to Philadelphia, passed through once." He did not elaborate, and Clara had the sense that there were stories there he had no intention of sharing. "Look, Miss Louise, I appreciate the conversation, but your father is probably watching from his bank window right now, and I do not need any more trouble with the man who controls the money in this town." "I am not afraid of my father," Clara said. "Maybe you should be. Men like him do not like it when their daughters develop their own opinions." Flynn pushed off from the fence. "You seem like a nice girl. Go on home before this becomes something it should not be." He walked back to the gray mare, effectively dismissing her. Clara stood there for a moment, torn between indignation and fascination. No man had ever dismissed her before. They usually fell over themselves trying to impress her or win her father's favor. She walked home slowly, her mind churning. When she arrived, her father was indeed standing at the front window of their house, his expression thunderous. "Where have you been?" "The general store, as I told Mother." "And then," Clara met his gaze steadily, "I stopped to watch a man train a horse. It was fascinating." Walter's jaw tightened. "You will not go near Flynn Crawford again. Do you understand me?" "I am 18 years old, Father. I am old enough to make my own decisions about whom I speak to." "Not while you live under my roof and depend on my money." Walter stepped closer, lowering his voice so her mother and sister would not hear from the other room. "That man is beneath you, Clara. He has nothing to offer you but a hard life and disappointment. I want better for you." "Better according to whom?" The words were out before Clara could stop them. "According to me," Walter said flatly. "I am your father and I know what is best. Robert Harrington will be visiting again next month. You will be gracious and welcoming." "Am I understood?" Clara wanted to argue, but she saw the steel in her father's eyes and knew it would be pointless. "Yes, Father." She spent the rest of the day in her room, reading the same page of her book over and over without absorbing a single word. Outside her window, the sun beat down on Glenrio, and somewhere across town, Flynn Crawford was working with horses and living the kind of life that seemed impossibly free compared to her own. 3 days passed before Clara found another excuse to venture out. This time, she waited until her father was occupied with a long meeting with some ranchers discussing a loan for cattle. She told her mother she needed air and exercise, which was true enough, and set out walking with no particular destination in mind. Her feet carried her to the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to scrubland and distant mesas. She had always loved this view, the way the land stretched out forever under the enormous sky. It made her feel small and significant at the same time. You keep showing up in places you should not be. Clara spun around to find Flynn leading his mare along the road behind her. The horse was a beautiful chestnut with a white blaze, and she walked beside Flynn without a lead rope, just following him like a dog. I was not aware that the edge of town was forbidden to me, Clara said, recovering her composure. It is not, but I am betting your father thinks any place I might be is off limits. He stopped beside her, and the mare lowered her head to crop at some sparse grass. She is pretty, is she not? Rosie here has been with me for 4 years, smartest horse I have ever known. Clara reached out slowly, letting the mare sniff her hand before touching her soft nose. She is beautiful. Where did you get her? Won her in a poker game in Dodge City. At Clara's surprised look, he added, the previous owner was an idiot who did not deserve her. He was using a crop and spurs on her, trying to force her to do what he wanted. I saw her in the stable before the game and made sure I won enough to cover her price. You cheated. I prefer to think of it as reallocating resources to a better purpose. Flynn's expression remained serious, but Clara saw the glint of humor in his eyes. Judge me if you want, but Rosie got a better life out of it. Clara found herself smiling despite herself. I suppose that is one way to look at it. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the mare graze. Clara was acutely aware of Flynn's presence beside her, the way he seemed completely comfortable in his own skin in a way she envied. Can I ask you something? Clara said finally. You can ask. I might not answer. Why did you stay in Glenrio after my father turned down your loan? There are other towns, other banks. Flynn was quiet for so long that Clara thought he might not respond. Then he said, I stayed because this feels like the right place. I have been moving my whole life, never putting down roots. Something about this town made me want to try staying still for once. Even though my father made it harder for you. Your father does not control everything, no matter how much he thinks he does. I have been saving money from the training work. In another year or 2, I will have enough to buy that land outright. No bank loan needed. He glanced at her. Why do you care? Clara considered the question. Because you are interesting. Most men I meet only talk about themselves or what they think I want to hear. You actually seem like a real person. As opposed to what? A fake person. You know what I mean. You do not try to impress me. Would it work if I did? Flynn asked. Clara felt her cheeks warm. I do not know. Perhaps you should try and find out. The words hung in the air between them, surprisingly bold. Flynn studied her face for a long moment, and Clara had the unsettling feeling that he could see right through all her finishing school polish to the confused, restless girl underneath. I think you had better go home, Miss Louise, he said finally, and his voice was gentler than before. Before we both do something foolish. What if I want to do something foolish? Then you are going to have to figure out if that is really what you want, or if you are just trying to rebel against your father. Flynn gathered Rosie's reins. Either way, I am not going to be the weapon you used to fight with him. I have enough problems without getting in the middle of a family war. He walked away before Clara could respond, leading Rosie back toward town. Clara stood there watching him go, feeling a mixture of frustration and admiration. He was right, of course, which only made it more annoying. Over the following weeks, Clara found herself thinking about Flynn constantly. She tried to focus on the social calls and tea parties that filled her mother's calendar, but everything felt shallow and pointless compared to those brief conversations at the edge of town. Her father increased his campaign to interest her in Robert Harrington, showing her letters from the Harrington family and talking endlessly about the advantages of the match. Clara smiled and nodded and felt like she was slowly suffocating. She began slipping out early in the mornings, walking to the edge of town where she had run into Flynn before. He was there most days, working with Rosie or one of the other horses he was training. At first, he would just nod at her and continue his work. But gradually, he began to talk to her, explaining what he was doing and why. Most people think horse training is about dominance, he told her one morning in early September. Breaking their spirit until they submit. But that is not training, that is just cruelty. Real training is about communication, finding a way to speak their language so you can work together. Clara watched as he moved around a young paint gelding, never crowding the animal but never backing away either. How did you learn to do this? Trial and error mostly, and watching. Horses will teach you everything you need to know if you pay attention. He paused, considering. My mother's father worked with horses too. I spent a few years with him as a kid. He taught me to listen. It was the most personal information Flynn had shared, and Clara treasured it like a gift. Where is he now? Dead 10 years. Flynn's voice was matter-of-fact, but Clara heard the grief underneath. Most everyone I knew growing up is dead or scattered. That is why I keep moving, nothing to hold me in one place. Except now you want to stay here, Clara said softly. Yeah, except now. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Clara felt something shift between them. That is starting to seem both smarter and more foolish at the same time. They both knew what he meant, even though neither of them said it out loud. The morning encounters became a regular thing, though they never planned them explicitly. Clara would walk to the edge of town, and Flynn would be there, and they would talk while he worked. She learned about different horse breeds and training techniques. He learned about her time in Philadelphia, the books she loved, her dreams of seeing more of the world. I feel like I am supposed to want what my father wants for me, Clara confessed one morning in late September. A good marriage, a comfortable life, a place in society. But when I think about marrying Robert Harrington and spending my life managing a household and attending tea parties, I feel like I cannot breathe. Then do not do it, Flynn said simply. It is not that easy. I have no money of my own, no way to support myself. What am I supposed to do? Run away and become a saloon girl? You could become a teacher or a seamstress or any number of things. Flynn paused in his work with the paint gelding. But I think the real question is what you want, not what you think you should want. I do not know what I want, Clara admitted. That is the problem. I think you do know. You are just scared to admit it. Clara looked at him, at his calm, knowing eyes, and felt something crack open in her chest. I want to matter. I want my life to mean something beyond being somebody's wife or daughter. I want to make my own choices, even if they are the wrong ones. I want to feel alive. Then start doing that, Flynn said. Stop waiting for permission. It sounded so simple when he said it. Clara wanted to ask him how, wanted him to give her a map for this new territory she was trying to navigate. But before she could speak, they heard horses approaching from town. Clara's father rode up with 2 of his associates, his face dark with fury. Clara Louise, what in God's name are you doing out here? I was taking a walk, Clara said, lifting her chin even as her heart pounded. I stopped to watch Mr. Crawford work. Every morning for the past 3 weeks, Walter dismounted heavily. Do you think I am an idiot? Do you think people have not noticed and reported back to me? I have not done anything wrong, Clara protested. We were just talking. You are compromising your reputation and embarrassing this family. Walter turned his glare on Flynn. And you, I warned you to stay away from my daughter. With respect, sir, I never sought her out, Flynn said evenly. She comes to watch me work. I have not been improper with her in any way. The impropriety is in the situation itself, Walter snapped. Clara, get on my horse. You are going home immediately. Father, please. You are making too much of this. Now, Clara. The steel in his voice left no room for argument. Clara cast one last look at Flynn, trying to convey an apology she could not speak aloud, then let her father help her onto his horse. As they rode back to town, Walter's associates following behind, Clara felt tears of frustration burning in her eyes. You are to stay away from Flynn Crawford, Walter said when they reached the house. I am not asking, Clara. I am telling you. If you go near him again, I will have him run out of town. Do you understand? Clara stared at her father, seeing him clearly perhaps for the first time. He was not a cruel man, but he was an inflexible one, and he valued control and reputation above all else. Nothing she said would change his mind. Yes, father, she said quietly. I understand. She spent the next 3 days confined to the house, helping her mother with household tasks and avoiding her father's disapproving glares. Beatrice tried to cheer her up with gossip and suggestions for new dress patterns, but Clara could not muster enthusiasm for any of it. On the 4th day, a letter arrived from the Harrington family. Robert would be arriving in 2 weeks for an extended visit. The implication was clear. Her father expected an engagement to result from this visit. Clara felt the walls closing in. That night, unable to sleep, she slipped out of the house after everyone was asleep. She did not have a specific destination in mind, just needed to feel the cool night air on her face and remember what freedom tasted like. She found herself walking toward the livery stable, toward the small camp Flynn had set up behind it. A fire still burned low and she could see his silhouette sitting beside it. You should not be here, Flynn said without looking up. He was whittling something, his hands moving with practiced ease. I know. Clara moved closer to the fire, drawn by its warmth against the desert night chill. My father told me he would run you out of town if I came near you again. Then why are you here? Because I am tired of everyone else deciding what I should do. Clara sat down across the fire from him. Because in 2 weeks, Robert Harrington is going to arrive and expect me to accept his proposal. Because if I do not make a choice now, someone else will make it for me. Flynn set down his whittling and looked at her properly. What are you asking me, Clara? Her name on his lips made her shiver. It was the first time he had called her anything but Miss Louise. I do not know. I just know that when I am with you, I feel more like myself than I ever do anywhere else. You see me, really see me, not just who my father wants me to be or who society says I should be. That is a lot to put on someone you barely know. I know you well enough, Clara leaned forward. I know you are patient and kind and honest. I know you work hard and dream of having your own place. I know you make me think about possibilities instead of limitations. Flynn was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the firelight. I have nothing to offer you, Clara. No money, no house, no security. Your father is right about that. I do not care. You will care when you are living in a one-room shack and washing clothes in a creek. You are used to silk dresses and china teacups. Those things do not matter to me, Clara insisted. What matters is being with someone who respects me, who sees me as a partner instead of property. You think I am that person after a few weeks of talking? Yes. Clara said it with absolute certainty. I think you could be. Flynn sighed and rubbed his face with both hands. This is a terrible idea. Probably, Clara agreed. But I am tired of doing what is sensible. Sensible is going to trap me in a life I do not want. And what do you want? Clara took a deep breath. I want to know if this feeling I have when I am around you means what I think it means. I want a chance to find out who I could be without my father controlling every decision. I want to choose my own life, even if it is harder than the one he has planned for me." Flynn stood up and walked around the fire to sit beside her. Up close, she could see the conflict in his eyes, the war between what he wanted and what he thought was right. "If we do this," he said slowly, "if we pursue this, your father will never forgive you. You will lose your family, your social standing, everything you have ever known. I know. I am not going to get rich, Clara. Best case, I buy that land and we build a horse ranch that makes enough to get by. You will work hard every day. There will be no servants, no fancy dresses, no easy life. I understand. And I am not going to change who I am or pretend to be something I am not to please your father or this town. I am a horse trainer. That is what I am good at, and that is what I will keep doing." "I do not want you to change," Clara said softly. "I like who you are." Flynn reached out and touched her face, his calloused fingers gentle against her cheek. "You are either the bravest woman I have ever met or the most foolish. Maybe both." Clara leaned into his touch, her heart racing. "Will you help me?" "Help you what?" "Choose my own life. Build something real, even if it is hard." She covered his hand with hers. "Will you give me a chance to prove I am stronger than I look?" Flynn studied her for a long moment, and Clara could see the exact instant he made his decision. Something in his expression softened and he pulled her closer, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "This is going to get complicated," he warned. "I know. Your father is going to make my life difficult. I know that too. And Robert Harrington might show up with a shotgun." "Let him try." Clara looked up at Flynn, feeling more certain than she had about anything in her entire life. "I am not afraid. You should be. I am terrified." But Flynn was smiling as he said it, and when he leaned down to kiss her, Clara felt like every choice she had ever made had been leading to this moment. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, both of them testing this new territory. Then Clara pressed closer, wrapping her arms around his neck, and Flynn deepened the kiss, his hands moving to her waist. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara felt like she was glowing from the inside out. "I should probably ask you to marry me," Flynn said, his forehead resting against hers, "if we are going to do this properly. Is that what you want?" "What I want is to keep kissing you and figure out the rest later, but I am guessing that is not going to work." Flynn pulled back slightly to look at her. "Clara Louise, I do not have a ring or pretty words prepared, but I can promise I will work hard, treat you with respect, and never try to change you into someone you are not. If that is enough, then yes, I want to marry you." Clara felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears. "That is more than enough. Yes, Flynn Crawford, I will marry you." They kissed again, and Clara thought about how strange it was that just a few weeks ago she had been standing outside her father's bank watching this man work with horses, never imagining that her entire life was about to change. "We need a plan," Flynn said when they finally separated. "Your father is not going to just let you go," Clara thought about it. "I have some jewelry my grandmother left me. It is mine, not part of my father's estate. I could sell it." "You are not selling your grandmother's jewelry." "Why not? It is just sitting in a box." "I would rather use it to start our life together than keep it locked away as a memory." Clara squeezed his hand. "Besides, I will have better memories to treasure." Flynn shook his head, but she could see he was touched. "How much do you think it is worth?" "Enough to help buy your land, I hope." Clara started planning out loud. "We would need to leave town quietly. My father will try to stop us if he knows. We could go to Santa Fe, get married there, then come back and buy the land before he can interfere." "When?" Flynn considered. "The sooner the better. Before Robert Harrington arrives and complicates things further." 3 days, Clara said decisively. "That gives me time to gather my things and sell the jewelry. Can you be ready?" "I am always ready. I have been living out of saddlebags for years." Flynn touched her face again, as if he could not quite believe she was real. "Are you sure about this, Clara? Once we leave, there is no going back." "I have never been more sure of anything." Clara kissed him once more, then stood up. "I need to get back before someone notices I am gone. Meet me at dawn in 3 days by the old cottonwood at the north edge of town." The cottonwood, 3 days, dawn. Flynn stood as well, holding her hand. "Clara, whatever happens, thank you for choosing me." "Thank you for being worth choosing," Clara whispered, then slipped away into the darkness. The next 3 days were the longest of Clara's life. She had to act normal, attending meals and social calls while secretly preparing to leave everything behind. She packed a small bag with practical clothes, none of the fine dresses her father had bought her. She retrieved her grandmother's jewelry from its hiding place in her room and took it to a jeweler in the neighboring town, claiming she wanted it appraised for insurance purposes. The jeweler offered her $800 for the lot. It was less than the pieces were probably worth, but Clara did not have time to negotiate. She took the money and hid it in the hem of her traveling dress, her heart pounding the entire way back to Glenrio. On the second day, Beatrice caught her packing. "What are you doing?" her sister asked from the doorway. Clara's mind raced. She could lie, but Beatrice knew her too well. "I am leaving," she said finally, "and I need you to promise not to tell Father until after I am gone." Beatrice's eyes widened. "You are running away with Flynn Crawford." "I am choosing my own life," Clara corrected. "There is a difference. Father will never forgive you, I know." Clara sat on the bed, patting the space beside her. Beatrice came over slowly and sat down. "I am not doing this to hurt him or you or Mother. I am doing this because if I stay, I will spend the rest of my life wondering what if. I cannot live like that. But Flynn Crawford, he has nothing. He has more than you think. He has dreams and ambition and the courage to work for what he wants." Clara took her sister's hand. "He sees me, Bea, really sees me. Not just a pretty face or a good match or a stepping stone to social advancement. When I am with him, I feel like I matter." Beatrice was quiet for a long moment. "I think you are crazy," she said finally, "but I also think you are braver than I could ever be." She squeezed Clara's hand. "I will not tell Father, but Clara, be careful. The world is not kind to women who step outside the lines. I know. But I would rather take my chances out there than be safe and miserable in here." Clara hugged her sister tightly. "Take care of Mother. She is going to need you." "When are you leaving?" "Tomorrow at dawn." "The less you know, the better." Clara pulled back. "I love you, Bea. I love you too. Even though you are making the most impractical decision in the history of impractical decisions." They both laughed, though tears were running down their faces. That night, Clara barely slept. She kept imagining things that could go wrong. Flynn changing his mind, her father discovering the plan, Robert Harrington arriving early. But when she finally dozed off near dawn, she dreamed of open sky and wild horses and a life that belonged to her alone. She woke while the house was still dark and dressed quickly in her traveling clothes. She left a letter on her pillow addressed to her parents, explaining her decision and asking them not to try to find her. She did not expect them to understand, but she hoped someday they might forgive her. The walk to the old cottonwood felt like it took forever and no time at all. The sun was just beginning to lighten the eastern sky when she arrived, and her heart sank when she did not immediately see Flynn. Then she heard a soft whinny, and Flynn emerged from behind the tree, leading Rosie and a sturdy bay gelding. "I was starting to worry you would not come," he admitted. "I could say the same about you." Clara felt giddy with relief and terror and excitement. "Is that horse for me?" "His name is Tucker. He is gentle but strong. I have been training him for the past month, thinking he might be useful someday." Flynn helped her up into the saddle. "You do ride, right?" "I took lessons in Philadelphia," Clara said, settling herself. "Though not in a dress like this." "You will learn. We have a long ride ahead of us." Flynn mounted Rosie and looked at Clara seriously. "Last chance to change your mind." Clara looked back at the town where she had grown up, at the house where her family still slept, unaware that she was leaving. She thought about the life she was abandoning and the uncertain future she was riding toward. "Let us go," she said firmly. They rode out of Glenrio as the sun rose, painting the desert in shades of gold and rose. Clara did not look back. The journey to Santa Fe took 4 days. They traveled carefully, avoiding main roads where they might be spotted, and reported back to Clara's father. Flynn proved to be excellent company, pointing out landmarks and wildlife, teaching her how to make camp and cook over an open fire. Clara's hands blistered and her legs ached from long hours in the saddle, but she felt more alive than she had in years. On the second night, as they sat by their campfire under a blanket of stars, Flynn asked, "Any regrets yet?" Clara considered the question honestly. She was dirty, tired, and sleeping on the ground. Her father was probably furious and her mother was probably heartbroken. She had given up comfort and security for uncertainty. "None," she said finally. "Not even a little bit." Flynn smiled, and it transformed his face, making him look younger and less guarded. "Good, because I have to confess something." "What?" "I am completely in love with you. Have been since you first showed up at the edge of town pretending you were not watching me work." He said it matter-of-factly, like he was commenting on the weather. "Thought you should know before we get married." Clara's breath caught. "You love me." Did I stutter? "No, I just—" Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you too. I think I have since the first day, but I was scared to admit it." "Why scared?" "Because it felt too big, too fast. I thought love was supposed to grow slowly over time." "Maybe it does for some people," Flynn said, "but I think sometimes you just know. You see someone and something in you recognizes something in them, and there is no point pretending otherwise." Clara moved around the fire to sit beside him. "My father would say that is foolish and impractical." "Your father would be right, but some things are worth being foolish for." Flynn wrapped his arm around her. "I am never going to be rich, Clara, but I will spend every day for the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me over that comfortable life you left behind." "I already know I will not regret it," Clara said, resting her head on his shoulder. "Being comfortable is not the same as being happy." They sat in companionable silence, watching the fire burn down to embers. Clara thought about all the proper young ladies she had known in Philadelphia, how they had been taught that marriage was a transaction, a merger of families and fortunes. She had never understood how people could enter into a lifelong commitment with such cold calculation. Now she understood that real love was not calculated at all. It was wild and terrifying and completely worth it. They reached Santa Fe on the afternoon of the 4th day. The city was bigger and busier than Glenrio, full of traders and travelers and the mixture of cultures that made New Mexico unique. Flynn found them rooms at a respectable boarding house, taking care to get separate accommodations until they were properly married. "I know we have already bent plenty of rules," he said when Clara questioned the expense, "but I want to do this part right. You deserve that much." They were married the next morning by a magistrate, with the boarding house owner and her husband serving as witnesses. Clara wore the nicest dress she had packed, a simple green cotton that brought out her eyes. Flynn had somehow acquired a clean shirt and had even trimmed his hair. When the magistrate pronounced them husband and wife, Flynn kissed her with a tenderness that made Clara's knees weak. The boarding house owner dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "You two remind me of my husband and myself 40 years ago," she said. "Young and foolish and convinced love conquers all. Does it? Clara asked. Not always, but it helps more than you might think. The woman patted Clara's cheek. Be good to each other. That is the secret. They spent their wedding night in Flynn's room at the boarding house. Clara was nervous, having been given only the vaguest instructions about marital relations by her mother years ago. But Flynn was patient and gentle, and when he made love to her for the first time, Clara understood why people wrote poetry about this. Afterward, lying tangled together in the narrow bed, Flynn traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "None," Clara said, and meant it with her whole heart. "Flynn, I need to tell you something. That sounds ominous. It is not bad, it is just—" Clara took a breath. "I know you said you had nothing to offer me, but that is not quite true. You offered me freedom and partnership and a chance to be myself. That is worth more than all my father's money." Flynn was quiet for a moment. "Your grandmother's jewelry brought in $800, did it not? How did you know?" "I saw the receipt in your bag when you were unpacking." "I was not snooping, it just fell out." He propped himself up on one elbow to look at her. "Clara, that money is yours. Your grandmother left it to you. And now I am sharing it with my husband. That is how marriage works, is it not?" Clara touched his face. "I want to use it to buy your land, Flynn, our land. I want us to build something together. It should be your choice to spend, not mine to decide. Then I choose to spend it on our future." Clara smiled. "Besides, someone has to keep you from living in a tent behind a livery stable for the rest of your life." Flynn laughed and kissed her again. "You are remarkable. Did anyone ever tell you that?" "Not until I met you." They stayed in Santa Fe for a week, enjoying the anonymity of a place where no one knew them or their story. Flynn showed Clara the sights, and they ate at cafes where no one cared that she was a banker's daughter married to a horse trainer. For the first time in her life, Clara felt like just herself, not an extension of her family or a representative of a social class. But they both knew they had to return to Glenrio eventually. Flynn had contacts there, and the land he wanted to buy was outside town. They could run, but Clara did not want to spend her life hiding from her past. "We go back and face it together," Flynn said when they discussed their options. "Your father can disapprove all he wants, but we are legally married now. There is nothing he can do about it. You do not know my father. He will find ways to make our lives difficult. Then we will deal with that when it happens, but I am not going to let him run us off before we even try." Flynn squeezed her hand. "We are going to buy that land, build our ranch, and prove to everyone, including your father, that we can make this work." The ride back to Glenrio felt shorter than the ride out, maybe because Clara was no longer running away but running towards something. When the town came into view, she felt her stomach clench with anxiety, but Flynn's steady presence beside her gave her courage. They went directly to the land office, where Flynn had been negotiating for months with the owner of the property he wanted. It was 500 acres of decent grazing land with a creek running through it and enough open space to build corrals and training facilities. The land agent looked surprised to see them together. "Mr. Crawford, Miss Louise, or should I say Mrs. Crawford now? The rumors are all over town." "Rumors?" Clara asked. "Your father has been telling everyone who will listen that Flynn Crawford kidnapped you and coerced you into running away." The agent looked sympathetic. "He is offering a reward for information about your whereabouts." Clara felt fury rise in her chest. "That is a lie. I chose to leave, and Flynn certainly did not kidnap me." "I believe you, madam, but your father is a powerful man in this town." The agent turned to Flynn. "I am sorry, but he came to me yesterday and made it very clear that if I sell you that land, he will pull all his business dealings from my office. I cannot afford to lose him as a client." Flynn's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. I understand your position. Thank you for being honest with us. Outside the land office, Clara paced angrily. This is outrageous. He cannot control the entire town. He can try, and given that he controls most of the money around here, he might succeed. Flynn leaned against the hitching post, thinking. We need another option. What about land further out, away from Glenrio entirely? Possible, but I have spent 6 months building a reputation here. All my clients are in this area. Flynn rubbed his face tiredly. I do not want to start over somewhere else unless we have to. Clara watched her husband, seeing the frustration and determination in every line of his body, and felt her resolve harden. We are not running away. My father does not get to control my life anymore, and he certainly does not get to destroy yours out of spite. What are you suggesting? I am going to talk to him. Flynn straightened. Clara, that is not a good idea. Why not? I am an adult and a married woman. He cannot lock me in my room like a child. Clara took Flynn's hand. I am not going to beg or apologize. I am just going to make it clear that this is happening whether he likes it or not, and he can either accept it or spend the rest of his life bitter and angry. And you think that will work? Probably not, but I have to try. Clara squeezed his hand. Come with me. We face this together. They walked through town toward the bank, and Clara was acutely aware of the stares and whispers that followed them. By now, everyone knew she had run off with Flynn Crawford. She lifted her chin and kept walking, refusing to show shame for a decision she did not regret. The bank was busy with afternoon customers, but the room fell silent when Clara and Flynn walked in. Her father emerged from his office, his face darkening when he saw them. Get out, he said flatly. Both of you. Father, we need to talk, Clara said, keeping her voice steady. I have nothing to say to you. You made your choice when you ran off with this drifter. Walter's voice carried through the bank, and Clara knew he wanted everyone to hear. You are no daughter of mine. The words hurt more than Clara had expected, but she refused to flinch. I am sorry you feel that way. But I am still here to tell you that Flynn and I are married. We are staying in Glenrio, and we are going to build a life here. You can accept that or not, but you are not going to drive us away. You think you can just waltz back in here and expect everything to be fine. Walter moved closer, his anger palpable. You have disgraced this family. Your mother has been in bed crying for days. Your sister cannot show her face at social gatherings. And you come in here with that man and tell me I have to accept it. Yes, Clara said simply. Because the alternative is losing me forever, and I do not think you really want that. You lost yourself the moment you threw away your future for a man with nothing to offer you. Walter turned his glare to Flynn. And you, I told you to stay away from her. Whatever lies you told her, whatever promises you made, you will not be able to keep them. You have no land, no prospects, and now, thanks to me, you never will. With respect, sir, your daughter makes her own choices, Flynn said quietly. I did not lie to her or coerce her. She knew exactly what she was choosing. She is 18 years old and naive. She has no idea what poverty and hard work really mean. Then I will learn, Clara interjected. And I will still be happier than I would have been married to Robert Harrington and living a lie. Walter's face went red. Get out, both of you, and do not come back. I meant what I said. You are no daughter of mine. Clara felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. She had known this was possible, but hearing it stated so baldly still hurt. Then I guess we have nothing more to say. Goodbye, Father. She turned to leave, Flynn's hand on her back providing silent support, but before they reached the door, a voice called out. Walter Louise, you are a stubborn fool. Everyone turned to see Mrs. Kelsey from the general store standing near the teller window. She walked forward, her expression disapproving. That girl is your daughter, and she just came back to face you when she could have stayed away and started fresh somewhere else. That takes courage." Mrs. Kelsey looked around at the gathered crowd. "I have watched Flynn Crawford work with horses for 6 months. He is honest, hard-working, and decent. If he were rich, half the families in this town would be throwing their daughters at him." "This is not your business, Martha," Walter said. "You made it everyone's business when you started spreading lies about him kidnapping Clara." Mrs. Kelsey planted her hands on her hips. "I have known you for 5 years, Walter, and you are a good banker but a poor father if you think your pride is worth more than your daughter's happiness." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Clara saw several people nodding, including some of her father's own customers. Walter looked around, seeming to realize that he was losing the room. "You all do not understand. I want what is best for her." "What you think is best," Clara corrected gently. "But I am the one who has to live my life, Father. I am the one who has to wake up every morning and look at myself in the mirror. And I want to see someone who had the courage to choose happiness over comfort." Walter stared at her for a long moment, and Clara saw emotions warring in his face: anger, hurt, pride, and something that might have been reluctant respect. "You will fail," he said finally. "Within a year you will be back here begging for help." "Maybe," Clara acknowledged. "But we will fail together, and that is better than succeeding at something I never wanted." She walked out of the bank with Flynn, and this time her father did not call her back. Outside, Clara let out a shaky breath. "That went about as well as I expected." "You were magnificent in there," Flynn said, pulling her into a hug. "I have never seen anyone stand up to their father like that." "I am terrified," Clara admitted into his shoulder. "What if we cannot find land? What if he does make it impossible for us to stay?" "Then we will figure something else out, but I am not giving up that easily." Flynn pulled back to look at her. "Come on, I have an idea." He led her to the livery stable, where they found the owner, a grizzled old man named Tom who had always been friendly to Flynn. "Tom, I need a favor," Flynn said, "and I promise I will make it worth your while." 2 hours later, they had an arrangement. Tom owned a small piece of property outside town, about 20 acres with a run-down barn and a house that had seen better days. He agreed to let Flynn and Clara live there, and use it for training horses in exchange for Flynn helping him with his own horses and handling overflow clients from the livery stable. It was not the 500 acres Flynn had dreamed of, but it was a start. They spent the next weeks making the place livable. The house needed extensive repairs, and the barn was barely standing. Flynn worked from dawn to dusk, fixing what he could, while Clara learned to cook on a wood stove and hauled water from the creek. Her hands blistered and her back ached, but every small improvement felt like a victory. Word spread about their arrangement with Tom, and slowly, clients started coming. Some were ranchers who had worked with Flynn before and did not care about Walter Louise's disapproval. Others were people who had been in the bank that day and respected what Clara had done. Clara's mother came to visit 3 weeks after they returned. She arrived alone, driving a small wagon, and stood uncertainly at the door of the ramshackle house. "Mother," Clara said, her throat tight with emotion, "please come in." Margaret Louise stepped inside, taking in the rough furnishings and Clara's simple dress with a mixture of dismay and resignation. "So this is what you chose?" "Yes." Clara straightened her spine. "This is my life now." Her mother was quiet for a moment, then sighed deeply. "Your father forbade me to come. He said if I had any contact with you, I would be betraying the family." "Then why are you here?" "Because you are my daughter, and I love you more than I fear your father's anger." Margaret reached out and took Clara's work-roughened hands. "I do not understand your choice. I think you are making your life much harder than it needs to be, but I can see you are happy and that has to count for something." Clara felt tears spill over. "Thank you, Mother. I brought some things." Margaret gestured to the wagon. "Kitchen supplies, linens, food. Your father does not know, and I would appreciate if you did not tell him." Flynn helped them unload the wagon, and Clara saw her mother watching him with critical eyes. But when Flynn thanked her graciously and offered her coffee, some of the suspicion in her expression eased. "Take care of my daughter," Margaret said to Flynn as she prepared to leave. "If you do not, you will answer to me." "I will spend every day trying to deserve her," Flynn promised. After her mother left, Clara felt lighter than she had in weeks. It was not forgiveness from her father, but it was a start. The months passed, and Clara settled into her new life. She learned to tell the difference between good hay and bad, how to spot when a horse was favoring a leg, and how to keep the books for their small but growing business. Flynn taught her to ride properly, and she discovered she had a natural feel for horses that surprised them both. By spring of 1879, they had saved enough to buy the 20 acres from Tom outright and another 30 acres adjacent to it. It was still not the 500-acre ranch Flynn had dreamed of, but it was theirs, free and clear. One evening in May, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors, Clara said, "I have something to tell you." Flynn looked at her, and she saw curiosity and something else in his eyes. "Good news or bad news?" "Good news, I think, I hope." Clara took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "I am pregnant. The baby should come in late autumn." Flynn's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, joy, fear, and finally a smile so wide it made him look like a different person. "You are sure?" "As sure as I can be." "I talked to Mrs. Kelsey, and she confirmed what I suspected." Flynn pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was made of glass. "You are going to be a mother, and you are going to be a father." Clara leaned back to look at him. "Are you scared?" "Terrified, but also—" Flynn shook his head, seeming at a loss for words. "I never thought I would have this. A wife, a home, a child on the way. I spent so many years drifting that I forgot what it felt like to want to stay in one place. And now I cannot imagine being anywhere else." Flynn kissed her softly. "Thank you for choosing me, Clara, for believing we could build something when everyone else said we would fail." "We have not succeeded yet," Clara pointed out. "We are still barely scraping by. But we are doing it together, and we are doing it our way." Flynn stood and pulled her to her feet. "And when our child is old enough to understand, we will tell them about how their mother had the courage to choose her own path, and their father was lucky enough to walk it with her." Clara felt tears sting her eyes, but they were happy tears. "I love you, Flynn Crawford. I love you too. More than I knew it was possible to love anyone." They stood together on the porch as the sun sank below the horizon. Two people who had chosen a hard road but walked it willingly, because they walked it together. The news of Clara's pregnancy reached her mother within days, courtesy of Mrs. Kelsey's reliable gossip network. Margaret appeared at their door with more supplies and a cradle that had belonged to Clara as a baby. "I do not know if your father will ever forgive you," Margaret said as she helped Clara clean and oil the old cradle, "but he should know about his grandchild." "Will you tell him?" Clara asked. "Eventually, when I think he is ready to listen." Margaret paused in her work. "You are truly happy, are you not? This is not just pride keeping you from admitting a mistake." Clara thought about her answer carefully. "Mother, every day is hard work. We are tired all the time, and there is never enough money. The house is small, and we have none of the luxuries I grew up with. But when I wake up in the morning, I am excited to start the day. When Flynn comes in from working with the horses, I cannot wait to hear about it. We make decisions together, and he values my opinion. That is what happiness looks like for me." Margaret nodded slowly. "Then I am glad you found it, even if it is not the happiness I would have chosen for you. It was not full acceptance, but it was better than nothing. As summer progressed, Clara's pregnancy became obvious. She had to stop some of the heavier work, which frustrated her, but Flynn hired a young man from town named Daniel to help with the rough labor. Business continued to grow by word of mouth, and they were busy enough that Flynn was training 4 or 5 horses at any given time. In late July, something unexpected happened. Clara was hanging laundry when she heard the sound of an expensive carriage coming up the road. Her heart sank when she recognized her father's vehicle. Walter Louise climbed down from the carriage, and Clara was shocked by how much older he looked. His face was drawn, and there was a weariness in his eyes she had never seen before. "Father," she said cautiously, "what brings you here?" "Your mother told me about the baby." Walter looked around the property, taking in the neat corrals, the repaired barn, the small but sturdy house. "I came to see for myself how you are living. As you can see, we are managing just fine. It does not look fine to me. It looks like hard work and poverty." But there was less condemnation in his voice than Clara expected. "Where is your husband?" "Out in the training pen with a mare. Would you like me to get him?" "No, I came to talk to you." Walter gestured to the porch. "May I sit?" It was so unlike her imperious father to ask permission that Clara was momentarily speechless. Of course. They sat in the chairs Flynn had built, an awkward silence stretching between them. Finally, Walter spoke. "I have been thinking a great deal about what you said in the bank. About choosing happiness over comfort." He stared out at the horizon. "Your mother pointed out that I have spent 30 years choosing comfort over happiness, and what did it get me? A bigger house, more money, and a daughter who could not wait to leave. Father, that is not fair. I did not leave because of you." "Did you not? Be honest, Clara. If I had supported your choice, would you have had to run away?" Clara considered lying, then decided her father deserved the truth. "No. If you had given us your blessing and treated Flynn with respect, I would have stayed and gotten married here." Walter nodded. "That is what I thought." He was quiet for another moment. "I was wrong about Flynn Crawford. I judged him based on his lack of money and social standing without considering his character. Your mother has pointed out, more than once and quite forcefully, that character matters more than wealth." Clara felt hope flutter in her chest. "Are you saying you have changed your mind about him?" "I am saying I was hasty in my judgment." Walter looked at her directly. "I am saying I would like to meet my grandchild when he or she arrives. I am saying that if you will allow it, I would like to try to repair the damage I have done to our relationship." Tears filled Clara's eyes. "I would like that very much. I am not promising to be perfect at this. I am still going to disapprove of your living conditions and worry about your future. But your mother reminded me that being a father is not about controlling your children's lives. It is about supporting them even when they make choices you do not understand." Clara stood and hugged her father, something she had not done since she was a child. "Thank you, Father. This means more to me than you know." Walter hugged her back stiffly, clearly uncomfortable with the display of emotion. "Yes. Well, do not make too much of it. I am still not happy about any of this." Flynn appeared from around the barn, stopping short when he saw Walter. Clara gestured for him to come over. "Father, I believe you know my husband, Flynn Crawford." The two men eyed each other warily. Then Walter extended his hand. "Mr. Crawford, it seems I owe you an apology for my behavior and the trouble I caused you." Flynn shook his hand, surprise evident on his face. "That is generous of you, sir." "It is not generous. It is what I should have done from the beginning." Walter's voice was gruff. "My daughter seems to think you hung the moon. I do not suppose you would care to explain what you did to earn that opinion." "I treated her like a person instead of property," Flynn said simply, "and I loved her for who she is, not who I wanted her to be." Walter studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Fair enough. He turned to Clara. I should be getting back. Your mother will want to hear how this went. He paused at the steps. The offer is still open at the bank if you ever need a loan to expand your operation. Flynn and Clara exchanged glances. That is generous, Flynn said carefully, but we prefer to build this ourselves at our own pace. I respect that. But the offer stands, no strings attached. Walter climbed into his carriage. Take care of my daughter, Mr. Crawford, and Clara, come visit your mother more often. She misses you. They watched the carriage roll away, both a bit stunned by what had just happened. Did your father just apologize to me? Flynn asked. I think he did. Clara leaned against him. And he wants to meet our baby. Miracles do happen. Flynn wrapped his arms around her, careful of her growing belly. Your family is coming back to you, not just my family, our family. Clara smiled up at him. Our child is going to have grandparents and an aunt and maybe even more cousins someday. The reconciliation with her father changed things gradually. Walter still did not approve of all of Clara's choices, but he stopped actively working against them. He recommended Flynn's training services to customers, though he made a point of saying it was because of the quality of work, not family favoritism. Beatrice started visiting regularly, bringing news from town and helping Clara prepare for the baby. She was fascinated by Flynn's work with the horses and spent hours watching him train, asking endless questions. You ever regret it? Beatrice asked Clara one afternoon in September. They were sewing baby clothes while Flynn worked in the corral, giving up everything for this. Clara looked around their small house, at the simple furnishings and the cradle waiting by the bed. She thought about her life in her father's house, the silk dresses and fancy dinners and suffocating expectations. Not for a single second, she said. This life belongs to me. Every hard part, every triumph, every decision, it is all mine. I would not trade that for anything. Beatrice looked wistful. I wish I had your courage. You have your own kind of courage, Bea. You are still there taking care of mother and managing father's moods. That takes strength too. It does not feel the same as what you did. Not everything has to be dramatic. You will find your own path when the time is right. Clara went into labor on a cold November morning. Flynn rode frantically to town to get Mrs. Kelsey, who had delivered half the babies in Glenrio, and Clara's mother. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Clara thought she could not go on. But Flynn stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and talking her through each contraction. Their son was born just after midnight, a healthy baby with a powerful set of lungs and his father's golden brown eyes. They named him James Walter Crawford, after Flynn's late father and Clara's own father, a gesture of healing and new beginnings. When Walter came to meet his grandson 2 days later, he held the baby with surprising gentleness, his stern expression softening into something Clara had never seen before. He has your mother's nose, Walter said to Clara, and hopefully your stubborn streak. He is going to need it if he is growing up out here. He will grow up strong and free, Clara said, and he will know he is loved. Walter looked up at her. I am sorry I did not tell you that enough when you were young, that you were loved, I mean. I thought providing for you and protecting you was enough. I did not realize you needed to hear the words too. It is not too late to start saying them now, Clara said gently. I suppose not. Walter handed the baby back to her. I love you, Clara. Even when I do not understand you, even when you make choices that terrify me, I love you. Clara felt tears slip down her cheeks. I love you too, Father. The years that followed were full of hard work and small triumphs. Flynn's reputation as a horse trainer grew, and they expanded their operation gradually, adding more land and building better facilities. Clara managed the business side while also caring for James, discovering she had a talent for negotiation and accounting. When James was 2, Clara became pregnant again. This time she knew what to expect, though the labor was no easier. Their daughter was born in the spring of 1882, a tiny thing with dark hair and her mother's green eyes. They named her Rose, after Flynn's faithful mare who had passed away the winter before. With 2 children and a growing business, life was busier than ever. But Clara had never been happier. She would catch Flynn watching her sometimes as she played with the children or worked on the books, and the love in his eyes made her heart swell. One evening when James was 4 and Rose was 2, Clara found Flynn sitting on the porch after the children had gone to bed. She sat beside him and he pulled her close. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Just remembering that first day you showed up at the corral pretending you were not watching me work." Flynn smiled. "I thought you were the most beautiful, most stubborn woman I had ever seen. I had no idea you would turn my entire life upside down. Are you complaining?" "Not even a little bit." He kissed her temple. "You gave me everything I never knew I wanted. A home, a family, a reason to stay in one place. Before you, I was just drifting through life. You gave me purpose." Clara thought about the girl she had been, standing outside her father's bank, watching a cowboy work with horses and dreaming of something more than the life planned for her. That girl had been brave enough to reach for what she wanted, even when it terrified her. "Do you remember the night I came to your camp and asked you to help me choose my own life?" Clara asked. "I remember thinking you were either incredibly brave or completely insane." "Which was it?" "Both." Flynn chuckled. "You are still both, and I love you for it." Clara turned to look at him properly. "Flynn Crawford, do you know what the most valuable thing in my life is? These children who refuse to sleep through the night, besides them." Clara took his face in her hands. "It is your love. Not my father's money or my grandmother's jewelry or this land we have worked so hard for. Your love is priceless to me. It is worth more than everything I gave up and everything I could have had. Do you understand that?" Flynn's eyes grew suspiciously bright. "I am just a horse trainer, Clara. I did not think I could give you anything of value. You gave me myself. You gave me a life that belongs to me. You gave me children and partnership and respect and joy." Clara smiled. "Your love is the most valuable thing I have ever possessed, and I will treasure it for the rest of my life." Flynn pulled her into a kiss that tasted of tears and laughter and the years they had built together. When they separated, he rested his forehead against hers. "Your love is priceless to me too," he whispered. "I was just a man going nowhere until you saw something in me worth believing in. You made me want to be better, to build something, to put down roots. Every good thing in my life came from you having the courage to choose me." They sat together on the porch as the stars came out, talking about their children and their plans for the ranch, and all the small details that made up a shared life. Clara thought about how far they had come from that dusty August day in 1878, when she had first watched Flynn work with horses. She had been so young then, so certain she wanted something different but so unsure of what that something was. Now she knew. She had wanted this, a partner who saw her as an equal, children who would grow up knowing they could choose their own paths, and work that made her feel capable and strong. Over the following years, the Crawford Ranch became known throughout New Mexico for producing quality horses and providing honest training. Flynn's patient methods became sought after, and people traveled from across the territory to work with him. Clara expanded their business to include buying and selling horses, using her Philadelphia education and her natural business sense to negotiate deals that benefited everyone involved. James grew into a thoughtful boy who loved reading as much as he loved horses. Rose was more adventurous, always climbing trees and getting into scrapes. In 1885, Clara gave birth to another son, Thomas, who had his father's quiet intensity and his mother's determination. Clara's relationship with her father continued to improve, though they still disagreed on plenty. Walter never fully understood why his daughter had chosen such a hard life, but he came to respect the partnership she had built with Flynn. He watched his grandchildren grow and saw how happy Clara was, and eventually admitted that perhaps he had been wrong about what made a good life. "You proved me wrong," Walter told Clara on his 70th birthday. The whole family had gathered at the ranch for a celebration, and he was watching his grandchildren play in the yard. "I thought you would fail and come crawling back. Instead, you built something real." "We built it together," Clara corrected, gesturing to Flynn, who was showing James how to work with a young colt. "That is what makes it strong." "Your husband is a good man," Walter said, and it was clear the admission did not come easily. "I was too blind to see it at first, but he has proven himself over and over." "He did not have to prove anything," Clara said. "He was always worthy. You just had to look past his lack of money to see it." Walter nodded slowly. "Money was always how I measured success." "It is hard to change the habits of a lifetime, but watching you and Flynn, seeing what you have built together, it made me reconsider what really matters." He looked at his daughter. "I am proud of you, Clara. I should have said that years ago." Clara hugged her father, feeling the circle close. She had her family back, not on their terms but on her own. As the evening wore on and the children were put to bed, Clara and Flynn stood on their porch watching the sun set. It was a ritual they had maintained for years, these quiet moments together at the end of busy days. "We did it," Flynn said. "We built the life we wanted. We did." Clara leaned into him. "And we are still building it. Thomas will need his own horse soon, and Rose wants to help with the training. James is talking about becoming a veterinarian. Our children are going to do remarkable things," Flynn said, "because they are growing up knowing they can choose their own paths, just like their mother chose hers. Just like their mother had the courage to stand up in front of the whole town and say that her father was wrong." Flynn turned to face her. "Do you remember what you said to me that night by the campfire, when you asked me to help you choose your own life?" "I said a lot of things. I was terrified and babbling. You said you wanted to feel alive. You wanted your life to mean something." Flynn touched her face gently. "I hope you feel alive now. I hope you know your life means everything." Clara felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears. "I feel more alive every single day, and it is because I get to spend those days with you." They kissed as the sun sank below the horizon. Two people who had chosen love over comfort, partnership over security, and their own path over the easy road. It had not always been simple, and there had been times when they had struggled. But they had built something real and lasting, and that made every difficulty worthwhile. The Crawford Ranch continued to thrive into the 1890s. As their children grew, they each found their own passions and paths. James did become a veterinarian, studying in Denver before returning to practice near the ranch. Rose surprised everyone by becoming a skilled horse trainer herself, eventually taking over much of the day-to-day training work from her father. Thomas showed an aptitude for business and helped expand the ranch's operations into breeding and selling horses across the Southwest. Flynn and Clara watched their children grow with pride, knowing they had given them the greatest gift, the freedom to choose their own lives. They had modeled what a real partnership looked like, based on mutual respect and shared goals, and their children carried those lessons into their own relationships. When Clara turned 40 in 1900, Flynn threw her a party at the ranch. The whole family came, including Clara's mother, who had outlived Walter by 3 years and had softened considerably in her old age. Friends and clients from across New Mexico attended, filling the ranch with laughter and music. As Clara looked around at the gathering, she thought about the frightened 18-year-old girl who had stood outside her father's bank 22 years earlier, watching a cowboy work with horses and dreaming of something more. That girl had taken a leap of faith, and it had changed everything. "What are you thinking about?" Flynn asked, sliding an arm around her waist. "Just remembering," Clara said, "and being grateful." "For what?" "For you. For this life. For having the courage to reach for what I wanted instead of settling for what was expected." Clara turned to face him. "Do you know what I told you all those years ago about your love being priceless? It is even more true now than it was then." Flynn had silver in his hair now, and the sun had weathered his face with lines and creases. But his eyes were the same, warm and golden and full of the love that had sustained them through 2 decades of building a life together. "Your love is priceless to me," Clara said again, loud enough that some of the guests nearby turned to listen. "More valuable than any fortune, more precious than any treasure. You gave me the freedom to be myself and the courage to live authentically. That is worth more than anything my father's money could have bought." Flynn pulled her close, and around them, people started to clap. It was not a grand declaration in a ballroom or a romantic gesture from a storybook. It was just 2 people who had chosen each other over and over again for 22 years, still choosing each other now. "Your love is priceless to me too," Flynn said softly, just for her. "Every single day, I wake up grateful that you were brave enough to choose me. I was nobody going nowhere until you saw something worth believing in." They danced together as the sun set, surrounded by the life they had built and the family they had created. Clara thought about all the things she had given up: comfort, security, her father's approval. And she thought about all the things she had gained: partnership, purpose, children who would grow up free to choose their own paths. The trade had been worth it 1,000 times over. Years continued to pass in the gentle rhythm of seasons and family milestones. Grandchildren arrived, 7 in total, and the ranch expanded to include homes for James and Rose and their families. Thomas moved to Albuquerque to manage the business side of the operation, visiting frequently with his wife and children. Flynn and Clara grew older together, their hair turning silver, their bodies slowing down. But their love never diminished. They still took their evening walks, still sat on the porch watching sunsets, still reached for each other in the night. When Flynn turned 65, he began training Rose's oldest son to take over the more demanding aspects of horse training. Clara had already turned over most of the business management to Thomas, though she still kept her hand in the bookkeeping. "We are becoming obsolete," Flynn joked one evening as they watched their grandson work with a spirited mare. "We are not obsolete," Clara corrected. "We are legacy. Everything we built, everything we taught them, it continues through our children and grandchildren." "That is a nice way of saying we are old." Clara laughed and took his hand. "We are old, but we are old together, and that makes all the difference." In the spring of 1910, they celebrated 32 years of marriage with a quiet dinner, just the 2 of them. Their children had offered to throw a party, but Flynn and Clara wanted time alone to remember. "You ever wonder what would have happened if you had listened to your father?" Flynn asked over dessert. "If you had married Robert Harrington and lived that comfortable life he wanted for you?" "Never," Clara said firmly. "I would have been miserable, and I would have made Robert miserable too. I was never meant for that life." "What were you meant for?" "This. You. A life that I chose instead of one that was chosen for me." Clara reached across the table to take his hand. "Flynn, I want you to know something. If I had it to do over again, knowing everything I know now, knowing all the hard times and struggles and challenges, I would make the exact same choice. I would choose you every single time. Flynn's eyes grew bright with emotion. That is good to know, because I would choose you too. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Clara Crawford. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You made me want to be better than I was. You were always enough exactly as you were. I just helped you see it. They finished their dinner and walked out to the porch, moving slower than they once had, but still moving together. The ranch spread out before them, generations of their work visible in every building and corral and fence line. "We did good," Flynn said softly. "We did," Clara agreed. "We took a chance on love and we built something that will outlast us both." They sat together as the stars came out, two people who had been brave enough to choose their own path and wise enough to walk it together. The wind carried the sound of horses in the distance and laughter from one of the nearby houses where their grandchildren were playing. Clara thought about the declaration she had made all those years ago, telling Flynn that his love was priceless to her. It had been true then, and it was true now, and it would remain true for whatever time they had left. Because real love, the kind built on partnership and respect and shared dreams, did not diminish with time. It only grew deeper, more valuable, more precious with each passing year. And that was the greatest gift Clara had ever received. A love worth more than any fortune, more lasting than any monument, more valuable than anything her father's money could have bought. A priceless love that had sustained them through 3 decades of building a life together, and would continue to sustain them until the very end. Flynn and Clara lived into their 80s, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The ranch they had built from nothing became one of the most respected horse operations in New Mexico, known for quality animals and ethical treatment. When Clara finally passed away in 1920 at the age of 60, Flynn followed less than 6 months later. Their children said he had simply lost the will to keep going without her, that his heart had been so entwined with hers that it could not beat properly alone. They were buried together on the ranch they had built, under a cottonwood tree Flynn had planted the year James was born. Their gravestone bore a simple inscription chosen by their children: "Two souls brave enough to choose love." The ranch continued through their descendants, who passed down the stories of how it all began. How a banker's daughter had fallen in love with a horse-training cowboy. How she had stood up to her father and society and chosen her own path. How she had declared that his love was priceless to her, more valuable than any fortune. And how they had proven, day after day for more than 30 years, that real love was indeed priceless. That courage and partnership could build something lasting. That choosing happiness over comfort was not foolish but wise. Their story became legend in Glenrio and beyond, a reminder that the most valuable things in life cannot be bought or sold or controlled. That freedom and love and authentic living are worth any sacrifice. And that sometimes the greatest fortune you can possess is not measured in money, but in the person standing beside you, choosing you every single day, just as you choose them. That was the true legacy of Flynn and Clara Crawford. Not the ranch they built, or the children they raised, or the business they created, but the example they set of what real love looks like when two people are brave enough to reach for it and strong enough to sustain it. A love that was, and always would be, absolutely priceless.